In this video, we'll see how to factor a quadratic trinomial. Remember, a trinomial is going to have three terms, and we call it quadratic because the term with the highest degree is 2. So let's look at some of these algebra tiles which you've seen. We had x squared plus 5x plus 6, and you saw that it's going to factor to x plus 2 and x plus 3. Let's look at how we get these factors here. Well, I know because of my first term, x squared, I'm going to need to multiply an x times an x. So that's going to be my first numbers in my binomials. And then the next thing to look at is the constant here. The constant is 6. Well, how can I get 6? I can get 6 by multiplying 1 times 6 or 2 times 3. Then I have to look at my middle term. My middle term is positive 5x. Well, where does that come from? That comes from combining these two sets of tiles here. That's a 2x and a 3x. So this is the factors that I'm going to use. So that's where we get the x plus 2 and x plus 3. What were those factors of 6 that when I add them up they give me 5? Well, let's look at this next example here. Again, I start with x and x because my first term is x squared. But now I'm going to look at my last term, that's c, which is negative 6. So negative 6, right? What are the factors of negative 6? Well, I've got negative 2, positive 3. I've got positive 2, negative 3. I've got 1 and negative 6, or negative 1 and positive 6. All of those factors give me negative 6. But which of those factors, when I add them together, is going to give me positive 1? Well, this one here, negative 2 and positive 3. That's why when I write this trinomial as two binomials multiplied together, it is x plus 3, x minus 2. All right, let's generalize this a little bit. X squared plus bx plus c. I'm asking myself, what are the factors of c? What do I multiply together to get c, that when I add them together I get b? So let's look at x squared plus 13x plus 36. I've got positive 36 as my constant. Now, what can I multiply together that gives me 36, but when I add it together I get 13? Well, to get 36 I could do 1 and 36, but that doesn't give me 13 when added together. 2 and 18 also won't give me 13 when added together. 3, 12 won't, but 4 and 9, when I add those together, I do get 13. So when I want to factor this trinomial, I again start with my x, because x times x gives me my x squared. And then what are the factors of 36 that have a sum of 13? 4 and 9. All right, let's look at another few examples here. 24. I need factors of 24. I'm sorry, negative 24. That will give me negative 5. Those signs are super important. Well, 8 and 3 give me 24. And if 8 is negative, and I add that to 3, I'm going to get negative 5. So negative 8 times positive 3, that gives me my c of negative 24. And then negative 8 plus 3 gives me my middle term, negative 5. So I'm going to factor this. X is my leading term for both of these. X minus 8, x plus 3. If you thought about it as x plus 3 times x minus 8, they're the same thing. All right, let's look at the next one. I've got positive 18 as my constant. What's going to give me positive 18? When I add it together, I get a negative 11. Well, if I multiply negative 2 times negative 9 together, I get positive 18. And when I add those together, I get negative 11. So x minus 2, x minus 9. If you're ever unsure, you can always just multiply these two binomials, and you have to get that trinomial that you started with if you are correct. All right, here are some for you to practice on your own. All right, so my constant is 54. What do I add together that is a factor of 54 that will give me 15? Well, 9 plus 6. So x plus 9, x plus 6. That's the factored form. All right, my constant is 12. What do I add together that's going to give me a negative 7? Well, if I take negative 4 times negative 3, I do get positive 12. And when I add those together, I'm going to get negative 7. So factored form of this trinomial will be m minus 4, m minus 3. And finally, k squared minus 5k minus 36. I need factors of negative 36 that when I add them together, I get a negative 5. Well, I've got a 9 and a 4, and if that 9 is negative, when I multiply that together, I get negative 36. And when I add those together, I get negative 5. Should definitely be a k. All right, let's see if you can do this one here. The standard form of this is going to be m squared, and then plus 3m plus 6m gives me plus 9m, and my constant is 18. Well, what's the factored form of that? What are the factors of 18 that add up together and equal 9? 6 times 3. So the factored form of this will be x plus 6, x plus 3. And then here are a couple good challenge problems. You'll notice there's some differences between these and the ones you did before. Give them a try. All right, let's look at this first one. F squared minus 10fn minus 75n squared. I see they've got an n squared there, so I know my last term, I'm going to be multiplying something times n, something times n. My first term will be f times f. Now the question is, what goes in front of the n's? Well, what are the factors of negative 75 that when I add them up I get negative 10? How about positive 5 and negative 15? I add those together, I get negative 10. And when I multiply them together, I get negative 75. So this will be f plus 5n, f minus 15n. And the last one here. Well, I've got r to the 6th. How can I get r to the 6th, but then I want r to the 3rd to be in my middle term? Well, if I multiply r to the 3rd times r to the 3rd, I know that's r to the 6th. And when I get the like terms there and add them together, it will be r to the 3rd. So what are the factors of positive 80 that add up to become negative 21? How about negative 5 times negative 16? R to the 3rd minus 5, r to the 3rd minus 16. And that is how we factor trinomials.